Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into something super fascinating, the invisible economic forces that are quietly but constantly shaping our daily lives right here in India. We spend so much time just reacting to the world around us, stressing over prices, paying taxes, negotiating our salaries, without really stopping to look at the hidden architecture underneath it all. Well, today we're pulling back the curtain. We're going to reveal the invisible rules of everyday wealth.
But right off the bat, I want to throw a question your way, one that really challenges how we usually think. Why do well-intentioned policies fail? It's a total paradox, right? We see these government initiatives or new rules created with the absolute best of intentions, and yet the outcome ends up being completely disastrous. Why on earth does that happen? Well, to figure that out, we need to bust some major economic myths.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for the explainer. Chapter 1. Intentions versus hidden costs. Chapter 2. The secret message of prices. Chapter 3. When controls break systems. Chapter 4. Decoding profits and wages. And finally, Chapter 5. Why trade is not war. All right, let's get started.
Chapter 1. Intentions versus hidden costs.
So, we're going to explore a fundamental rule of human behavior. People don't really respond to good intentions. They respond to incentives. Think about it. Let's say a state government decides to impose a super rich tax. Step 1, the intention is incredibly noble, right? Tax the wealthy to fund free schemes for the poor. But what actually happens in Step 2? Well, the wealthy businessmen, looking at their own incentives, simply pack up and shift their businesses to states with lower taxes, like Gujarat or Karnataka. So by Step 3, instead of gaining all this extra money, the original state suffers a massive loss in both tax revenue and local jobs. It just goes to show that before trying to get someone to do something, you can't just look at what you want to achieve. You have to look at the reward your system is actually offering them. Incentives matter way more than intentions.
And this brings us to another hidden cost we run into literally every day. Opportunity cost. Because our resources, like money, time, and energy, are completely limited, which means choosing one thing automatically means giving up another. Just look at this comparison. You could buy a shiny 25 lakh luxury car, or you could buy a highly capable 10 lakh basic car and take that remaining 15 lakh and dump it right into Indian mutual funds or the stock market.
Because if you went with the investment strategy, over 15 to 20 years, that 15 lakh doesn't just sit there, it grows. We're talking about it potentially becoming a staggering 1 crore rupees. So when you're at the dealership buying that luxury car, ask yourself, is the price tag really just 25 lakh? No way. The true cost of that car is the 1 crore future fund that you completely missed out on. That is the invisible reality of opportunity cost. You always have to ask yourself exactly what future you're sacrificing for a present purchase.
Chapter 2. The secret message of prices. Have you ever stopped to think about how massive, sprawling cities actually get their food? I mean, how does that happen without a centralized government planner dictating every single move? Every morning, fresh milk arrives in Mumbai, apples travel all the way from Kashmir to Delhi, oranges from Nagpur are delivered seamlessly across the country. And here's the amazing part, this all happens perfectly without the government appointing a vegetable minister to calculate exactly who needs what. It's driven entirely by an invisible, brilliant network.
And that network is simply prices. Prices are an invisible network that transmits honest messages about supply and demand across the entire market. We often think of prices, especially high prices, as an enemy or some kind of punishment, but they aren't. They're actually a critical communication tool that balances our entire economy without anyone having to pull the strings.
Now what's really interesting here is looking at this communication in action. Say unseasonal rain ruins the onion crop, right? There's a sudden scarcity and the price of onions spikes. Now we might get angry, but that price spike is actually a protective signal. It tells the customer, hey, there are way fewer onions right now, maybe buy a little less, and simultaneously it sends a loud message to the farmers saying, onions are in huge demand, plant a lot more for the next harvest. The high price isn't the problem at all, it's just the honest signal that there's a scarcity.
Moving on to Chapter 3. When controls break systems.
So, if prices are basically the market's communication system, what happens when governments artificially mess with those signals? Let's look at forcing prices down first, which is known as a price ceiling. Imagine a city where rent is just soaring, so the government steps in and caps all rent at a maximum of 5,000 rupees. The intention? Help the poor afford housing. But the reality? New landlords stop building rental properties entirely because it's just no longer profitable.
Existing landlords stop maintaining their decaying buildings. Eventually, a black money market like the Pugby system takes over, and you're left with a severe housing shortage. By forcing the price artificially low, you literally destroy the supply.
On the flip side, what happens if the government forces prices artificially high? This is what we call a price floor. Take the minimum support price, or MSP, for wheat and rice in India. To support farmers, the government guarantees a high purchase price. The result? Well, farmers naturally chase that incentive. They overproduce wheat and rice, totally ignoring other crops. The government is then forced to buy it all up, leading to millions of tons of rotting grain in warehouses, while the country simultaneously suffers a severe shortage of essential pulses and oils. It's a classic example. Tampering with natural prices always has unintended consequences.
Chapter 4. Decoding Profits and Wages.
All right, it is time to fundamentally reframe how we look at business survival and our own salaries. Here's the reality. A business loss is not a failure. It's a guide. We're so conditioned to view a business shutting down as a tragedy. But in the grand scheme of economics, a profit tells you that you're using national resources well, and a loss is simply the market screaming at you to stop wasting precious resources.
Here's a perfect example. Say a company making those old, outdated black and white keypad phones starts failing because nobody wants them anymore. The company suffers massive losses. Now, if the government bails them out with taxpayer money, they're just wasting funds on dead tech. But if the company shuts down, step 2 happens. All those brilliant engineers, the electricity, the steel, all of that is freed up to pivot into thriving future industries, like electric vehicles or 5G technology. The failure of the old is exactly what makes room for the innovation of the new.
And this brilliantly illustrates how we should actually view our own wages. Think about a construction site. A laborer puts in incredibly high physical effort from dawn till dusk, but the financial value created is limited because it's easily replaceable labor. Meanwhile, the civil engineer or the manager might not sweat nearly as much physically, but their technical knowledge on mix design and safety, that saves the company crores of rupees. Your employer doesn't pay you for your physical exhaustion or the number of hours you sit staring at a desk. They pay you for the tangible value and the results you generate.
And this is exactly why arbitrarily inflating minimum wages beyond the actual value a worker creates can be super dangerous. If the government forces contractors to pay unskilled laborers way more than the value they produce, the contractor's incentive changes immediately. They'll simply fire the workers and replace them with automated machines, like excavators and concrete mixers. Trying to artificially force high wages actually increases unemployment. If you want to earn more, the invisible rule is simple. Upgrade your skills to create more value.
Chapter 5. Why Trade is Not War.
You know, we hear a lot of rhetoric that makes international commerce sound like some kind of sports match, where one country has to win and the other absolutely has to lose. Let's dispel that myth right now. Trade is actually a massive win-win collaboration. Think about it. India imports enormous amounts of crucial crude oil from the Middle East. Does buying that oil mean India is losing? Absolutely not. If India stubbornly wasted resources trying to drill for oil it doesn't easily have, it would be an absolute economic disaster. Instead, India imports what it lacks and exports what it does best, things like basmati rice, spices, and world-class medicines. By focusing on their strengths, both regions grow significantly wealthier together.
To make this totally clear, let's bring this massive macro concept down to a deeply personal level. Think of a top-tier Supreme Court lawyer who charges 5 lakh rupees an hour. Now imagine the same lawyer happens to be phenomenally good at cleaning their own office. Should they do it themselves just to save some money? No way! They should outsource it to a cleaning assistant for $15,000 a month. Even if the lawyer is technically better at cleaning, doing it themselves means giving up their highly valuable legal hours. By trading, the lawyer maximizes their own wealth and creates a brand new job for the cleaner. Everyone wins.
Which brings us to a final question I want to leave you with today. Look at how you operate in your own life and your own career. Are you constantly wasting energy trying to fix all your weaknesses, or are you doubling down on your absolute strengths and trading for the rest? Understanding these invisible rules of value, incentives, and trade isn't just about understanding national economics, it's quite literally the blueprint for your own everyday wealth. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I highly encourage you to start looking for these invisible forces in the world around you. See you next time.